Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Vice President, Strategy, Pivotal, James Waters.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for being here in Austin. Tremendous room, exciting opportunity. And, I was thinking on the way here, why am I so excited to come to SpringOne every year? Like, what makes this special for me? Like, why is it this moment that I want to tweet about, welcome everybody to, send high fives? What's that essential thing about SpringOne that's so special? And, kind of what I came to is it's the one place where cloud-native developers are front and center. You travel a lot in the world, and you meet these enterprises that haven't quite figured out how to build software yet. They're, saddled with a lot of legacy. They think we could never build great software. We could never enable developers. We could never learn these new cloud-native patterns like Netflix and these web companies. But this is a really special room to me because it's the one place you can assemble a group of people who do and who believe in that model. And I think that's a lot of what I'll be sharing today and doing a little bit of MC, a little bit of vision and roadmap for us about where we're going. One thing that's really remarkable about SpringOne is the number of enterprises that are here speaking. So there's 2 slides here full of enterprise names. But the thing that I think they all have in common is that they've taken this unique and new approach to enterprise IT where they've really started to put developers first. And they've thought, if we can just give developers this amazing, low-friction path to production, what kind of human potential could we unleash? And I think that's really a special thing because there's all kind of security requirements, operational readiness, all of these extra burdens that enterprises carry. But the companies that come to SpringOne to present and share their stories have found a way to get developers to production in a secure, available, reliable way. And I think that confluence of developer enablement, security, and operational readiness is super unique to this conference, and I couldn't be more excited to hear more and more of these stories. I'm almost always excited to get off stage and just go listen to this. So what does that take? Just a little bit of review. Where are we in the market right now? Where are we as an industry? It kind of takes 2 things in my observation over my journey. It takes a set of new technologies, and it also takes a new philosophy. And I think the one rallying word we've all found to describe this paradigm shift we're going through that's putting developers first, making APIs front and center to our architecture, is cloud native. I think if you look at what Spring Boot has done to reduce the burden of getting a new API to production in enterprises, it's been unbelievable. I think Cloud Foundry has come to define the developer experience in the container era. Kubernetes has become the ubiquitous substrate for programmable infrastructure. And our friends over at Confluent and Kafka have started to define how developers get access to data and events to let them build a new set of rich applications. But there's also a philosophy behind all of this. And I think that philosophy starts with the idea that continuous delivery unleashes human potential. The idea that getting to prod versus getting to a meeting versus getting to a ticket is more important. And I think the other thing that's required in that era is a move around open source. The idea that these communities can interact with each other in real time, start with Git, and really build an ecosystem. So I think the open source ecosystem, along with this continuous delivery ethos, has really changed how we all do our jobs. But let me give you one really practical example. Like, what does that all mean? I think there's a new litmus test, which is that if you can't provide a developer experience in your product, it might not deserve to exist in your enterprise anymore. And I've encouraged a lot of the C-levels that I meet to start putting a litmus test of what's in and what's out. And there's a new era where if it isn't container-friendly, if it isn't dev-centric, if you can't put it through a CI/CD process, it's not testable. And I would say if it's not just another boot app to some level in enterprises, it might need to go. We've put up with the world where a lot of sales-driven architectures have taken over enterprises, where there might be someone who sells integration software who wants to put everything that you're doing in their integration framework. But what we found is that those things are not testable, they're not good for continuous delivery, and they're not developer friendly. And I'll tell you one quick story. We were starting a project 3 or 4 years ago, and there was this one project, and at the middle was this nice boot app that was great, but I looked all around it, and there was all of this integration software. And I said to the lead architect, I was like, you might have a challenge with that because you're going to be able to test and iterate on this central piece, but everything around it's going to be difficult. And he's like, yeah, we just got to get started. It was 1 year later, into my inbox, email. Yeah, all of that stuff that's not Spring Boot is slowing us down. So a lot of I didn't take too much pride in that, but a lot of what we're talking about today is how we're enabling developers in this cloud-native era because of lessons like that. The other great thing is that this is not just rah-rah. For enterprises now, there's a whole new set of data. And that data says that enabling developers to get to production in a continuous fashion actually changes all of these KPIs that you're looking for as businesses. So if you look at mean time to recovery, the DORA report from my friend Nicole Fosgren tells us that mean time to recovery goes down dramatically at enterprises that enable continuous delivery. So it used to be in the ITIL world, you had this force between change control and availability. Oh, we can't change because we need to drive availability and control. What the DORA science has now told everyone in your business is enable developers to go faster, and your mean time to recovery will be 7x better. So there really is science now behind all of this, and I think that's an exciting moment for us as a movement, is you've got technology, philosophy, and science all working in concert with each other. I think it's ushered in a whole new world of enterprise IT. I think the other thing about SpringOne, in addition to its developer focus, is it's very enterprise focused. We don't start with a 10-person startup and say, hey, that's success, all greenfield, win. We really confront a lot of the technologies that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis around our heritage applications. And if you look at how this paradigm shift to continuous delivery, it's changed everything from how we think of projects to products, of how we used to plan things in 600-page requirement documents, and now we have a more iterative approach. It used to be that everything was surrounded with ITIL, and now CI/CD is the word on the tongue of every CIO that I meet. And on a technology level, we've started to see technologies like event streaming replace a lot of the traditional way that we've managed data and data processing, and I'll talk a bit more about that. So, 2 big fronts in this change. One is cloud-native infrastructure. About to have a special guest tell us about big investments coming in the cloud-native infrastructure space, and also cloud-native app infrastructure. And I'm going to be welcoming up Cornelia Davis to talk a little bit about how we're regenerating everything that we do around Kubernetes in that era for cloud-native app infrastructure. One of our biggest partners in our journey to bring our platform technology to enterprises has been VMware. About 70% of all PCF workloads run on a VMware environment. And I couldn't be more excited to welcome to the stage a gentleman who's declared a definitive agreement to acquire Pivotal, Pat Gelsinger.
James, thank you. Great to be here.
It's so amazing to have you on stage here at SpringOne, Pat. Thank you.
Well, and I was so excited as, some of you might have seen, we announced our plan to acquire at VMworld.
Yeah.
And as part of that, we talked about the Spring community.
Yeah.
And I'll just tell you, I am blown away by the energy, the innovation. 75 million Spring Boot downloads every month. Wow. Right? To me, this is just off the charts. You guys, thank you so much. And we're just thrilled to bring this community and that energy into VMware Pivotal as we bring this together.
I think the Spring community couldn't be more excited about your sponsorship on that. A couple weeks ago, though, there's this technology announcement you made at VMworld. Big show, unbelievable response. Tanzu, can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, we're quite excited about Tanzu, and it really is bringing together everything that VMware is doing in this space. And what we see is that every organization has a strategic priority to build modern applications. And how do you bring those? How do you accelerate that? And we saw that there's this unique opportunity to bridge the world of developers and operators. And clearly, IT operations, that's sort of the VMware core, customer base and partners, but being able to bridge that in a seamless way into the developer community, wow. Operators, they want this consistent, rock-hard, secure infrastructure stuff. It's our job to make it work. Developers, they want access to modern constructs, tools, capabilities, microservices, APIs. And we see Kubernetes as the magic of bringing those two worlds together. And for that, we see Kubernetes, somewhat like the virtual machine or Java. If my name was Scott McNeely and I was here 20 years ago, I'd be jumping up and down on stage and saying Java is it. And by the way, Scott is my neighbor, right, in California, but he lives down the hill from me, so I look down on Scott. Right, so he truly is down the hill, but his house is bigger than mine. So anyway, but just a little bit. But Kubernetes, this idea of being able to bridge those two worlds. And not only do we see that opportunity, but it has achieved industry consensus.
Totally.
Right, and there's this momentum in the industry about this together, and that's what VMware Tanzu is all about: is bringing those two worlds together, bringing the energy together, and Pivotal and the Spring community play a critical role to make that successful.
I think as we're making this transition to a Kubernetes-centric world, it couldn't be more exciting to have your team's help on that. So what is it going to take, though, to really bring Kubernetes to every enterprise? How are you thinking about solving that challenge?
Yeah, well, we've broken it into these three buckets, and this is a picture that we showed at VMworld: the build, the run, and the manage bucket. And let's just walk around that super quickly. Build, obviously, this is you all. Right? And we have the Bitnami acquisition, but this is the core of what we see the Pivotal and the Spring community is bringing these world-class build capabilities. Then we're going to be able to manage them in a consistent way. And about a year ago, we acquired Heptio, and they're really in this multi-cloud management that you really could have one management plane that is being able to run all of your Kubernetes clusters and container environments, whether it's on public clouds, native like Azure and Amazon, or private cloud. That's where the Heptio team fits in. But the idea of run. This was like, imagine you're going to a Beatles weekend, right? And they start playing Beatles favorites, right? And this was sort of like when we announced that we're putting Kubernetes directly into vSphere. It's like now we're playing Hey Jude on the Beatles weekend. Everybody in the vSphere, they're all going crazy. This is what we do for a living, is run infrastructure. And now we're going to be the leaders in running Kubernetes. That coming together is what PKS and what we're doing with Project Pacific. Putting Kubernetes right into the core of vSphere. So build, run, manage.
The excitement was palpable in the cloud native community about that. I think it was a watershed moment when you realize this is really happening. Cloud native enterprises everywhere.
Yeah, and for it, we see the role of Craig McLuckie and Joe Beda, two of the three founders of Kubernetes, being super critical to that. And that's what they bring to the party. And I'll tell you, those guys are so excited about this transaction and how we're bringing these communities together, and we see them really, being a powerful force and being able to help to bridge those two worlds as we describe it.
Yeah, Craig has often described his excitement about the Spring community to me. It's very palpable. So maybe another question then. Kubernetes is open source, Spring is open source. We're talking a lot about open source. People don't always associate VMware immediately with open source. You care to comment on that?
Really? Oh, man. We're working on it. And, it's very interesting, that, fundamentally, as we'd say, the open source world is changing. Right? And as these shifts are occurring, VMware is highly committed to, I'll say, change our profile in the open source community. And we've been taking steps to do that. That was part of the Heptio acquisition. Right? Craig and Joe, as we were meeting with them and I was meeting with them, they were almost more interested in what the deal terms, more interested in our commitment to open source than the deal terms of Heptio. Right? Are you guys really committed to this? Or are you really going to standardize this, commit to the community contributions and that partnership? And the answer was yes, and that's part of what led them to believe VMware was the right place. It's also part of the Pivotal transaction, right? And part of the conversation, are we really committed to go be that leader in the open source community? And absolutely we are. And what we've seen is that, the Kubernetes, in open source, it isn't a question of what you say. It's what you do, or more specifically, what you contribute. right? And now VMware is the #2 contributor to Kubernetes overall, right? And we're increasing the overall bandwidth, commitment, engineering resources that go behind our commitment to open source and Kubernetes. And in the next couple of years, my objective would be is that VMware is seen, perceived, and realized as one of, if not the most enterprise-friendly open source company in the industry.
I think that's super exciting. If you
Does
just
that get you interested? Yeah? Yeah?
like that?
Okay, yeah.
I think that's super exciting. If you just look at the assets between the creators of Kubernetes, the Spring community, everything you have in cloud-native open source right now, it's a big change. So since you brought it up, why Pivotal? What was the motivation for that? We talked a little bit around open source, but maybe you can walk us through that.
Yeah, a little bit full circle.
Totally for me, yes.
You know, welcome back to the future.
Excited.
Anyway, you know, and it really is in many ways, you know, we've been busy at VMware the last few years, and our networking thrust, SDDC, our cloud thrust. And, you know, frankly, you know, when we and EMC, now Dell, agreed to separate Pivotal and bring those assets together, I'd say, boy, we would not have been able to do what Pivotal has done over the last 5 or 6 years. We were busy, you guys were investing heavily, right? So to some degree, this was sort of an opportunity that we knew we couldn't materialize had we kept the Pivotal resources inside of VMware. So having that separation allowed it to grow and really flourish, but now we see this opportunity to bring these back together because now it's time to scale. You know, the Kubernetes transition in the industry is real. Pivotal has reached a velocity, a capacity, a critical mass, and a reputation in the industry. So this idea of coming full circle, right, as this Kubernetes transition, and as Pivotal has already laid that out, right, is super exciting to us, but also in the Spring community. We're just in awe of what you guys have done. You know, we don't have that developer DNA, that reach in that community, so we're thrilled about being able to leverage, expand, and accelerate that as well. And we've been working with you all, you know? We sort of like you folk, right? You know, right over here, and think products like VMware PKS, you know, have helped us sort of build that bridge that we can naturally accelerate as we now bring the companies together. And as you know, we're working quickly on that. We've committed that the transaction will be finished before the end of the year, and we're thrilled for what the opportunity that presents for this community, for the Pivotal team, but most importantly, for the mutual customers of our offerings.
Yeah, I think it's such an exciting moment for the industry, for a cloud-native enterprise in general. Thank you so much for joining us, Pat. We couldn't be more excited.
Well, thank you all. Very good.
Thank you. That's a cool moment to see him making that commitment to open source cloud-native enterprise. If you want a symbol of how real this is getting in enterprise, I think no one better to listen to around that. I was trying to think of, you know, this full circle concept, and you know, a little bit about what's happening with Kubernetes in our platform. And for me, I have to go back to, this is 2011, the original 5 people that did Cloud Foundry and Wired magazine. And the thing that's funny is we didn't have all of this great cloud-native technology then. Like, Spring Boot hadn't yet redefined how enterprises were going to build microservices. There was no such thing as a common Kubernetes scheduler. Envoy didn't exist to do layer 7 traffic routing. There wasn't really clouds, like Microsoft and Google were still on the sidelines. And VMware funded this initiative to go build a cloud-native application platform before anyone else did. And I think the legacy of that has had a remarkable impact in the industry. And I do think that there's a continued need to steward this best developer experience in cloud native at VMware that they rightfully own. And so I'm going to welcome up on stage next a really brilliant technologist and personal friend of mine, Cornelia Davis.
Thank you so much, James. So appreciate it. It is so great to be here on the first morning of SpringOne Platform and be able to be part of the group that is welcoming you here to Austin. As they say, when in Rome, right? Thank you so much for the opportunity to come out and talk about both cloud-native infrastructure, but really more the applications, because we've been talking about that for the last few minutes already. So we're going to go back to this slide, which is the overall Tanzu slide, but what we want to do is we want to drill in on that build box. And this is really where the platform lives. It's the platform that we know and love, our flagship PCF platform, but it's a platform that's expanding to do more than that. It's the pivotal platform. So when we talk about that pivotal platform, I really want to talk about three things. I want to talk about continuing to push the envelope in the platform that we have been curating for the last 6 years, 6, 7, 8 years. As Pat said, the ability to do that within the pivotal context, within the pivotal company, is really what enabled us to do these big things. So we're going to talk about continuing that, to push that envelope in the application dial tone. Then we're also going to start to talk more and more about how Kubernetes comes into that. So without further ado, let's push forward and talk about that first one.
What I hear you saying, Cornelia, is we're going to review a little bit about how we're bringing CF to Kubernetes, and then also bringing some of the CF experiences and components to every Kubernetes.
Exactly right. Exactly right. You'll see it goes in both directions. Now, before I actually drill into the details of that, I want to talk first about how we keep pushing the capabilities that we are providing in the flagship product that many of you know and love and have gotten so much business value from. So Pivotal Application Service 2.7 is the next release. And I'm not going to go through all of these details, but what I want to point out to you is the first couple of things on this slide. We've been talking about getting developers to prod, right? So if you take a look at things like native rolling application deployments and the ability to go back, roll back to a previous deployment, putting all of that in the hands of the developer, not having to file a ticket to say, hey, I need to go back a couple of versions, having the developer be able to do that, that is something that we are bringing to the PCF platform.
And I think that's a good thing to reaffirm here. The continuous investment in the best developer experience for continuous delivery on containers is mission number one.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things that's really interesting is for those of you who maybe know Kubernetes a bit better, these are some of these ideas are actually seeded from what we were able to learn in this open source community that is Kubernetes. So the ability to keep track of a number of version deployments, those ideas really were keyed off of that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So moving forward then, let's talk a little bit more about actually not just seeding the ideas from Kubernetes into the Pivotal platform, but actually bringing Kubernetes directly into the Pivotal platform. In particular, right here, what you see is what I remember years ago James saying is sacred. That is the CF push experience. I actually remember him walking around the floor on the fourth floor
I would have a little card that say CF push is sacred.
Yep.
Because
CF push is sacred.
Because
he
at
would
the
say,
time,
don't mess with my CF push.
Because at the time, it was an unproven idea. The idea that you would just take an artifact and arbitrarily hand it to a computer, and the computer would algorithmically derive its runtime environment, put it in a container, auto-wire it to load balancing, that was sort of crazy.
It was.
And so it was sacred to get that right, and we carry that forward today.
Yep, exactly. And so what we're continuing to hold that sacred. So we're still holding that sacred, James, which is this CF push experience. Now, as James said, we had to build our own container scheduler because Kubernetes and, quite frankly, Docker didn't even exist back then. So we created our own image format, all of those types of things. What we're able to do now is we are able to leverage things like container scheduling from Kubernetes. And that, however, we're maintaining this sacred CF push. Well, what does that buy us? Well, what that buys us is the ability to start to leverage all of the innovation that's happening around that Kubernetes container scheduler in the platform experience.
Yeah. And you know, just a quick customer story here. You think about the ubiquity of Kubernetes and how that's happening and what VMware is doing with this mission control single pane of glass. Some of our early customers have said, we can't wait to have a kubectl experience for our operators to integrate into their operational single pane of glass dashboards like mission control.
Yep, exactly. So that's the second thing that we're doing. Now, finally, talking about the third thing is that many of you are able to take advantage of quite a number of capabilities. It's along the lines of that auto wiring. It's, hey, here's CF Push, and we do all of this magic behind the scenes for you. Well, why should that just be limited to the CF Push experience? Can we start to bring some of those capabilities natively over onto the Kubernetes stack? And that's what we're starting to do as well, is bring those capabilities over to Kubernetes. So let me give you a couple of examples here. First, number one, the process of building code needs to be not only repeatable, repeatability is important, but it also needs to have some of those enterprise controls that you were alluding to earlier.
Security, frankly. Like, it's a huge problem to enable developers to continuously get to production if security is not auto-wired into the system.
Exactly. And so that's where the Pivotal Build Service and cloud-native build packs come in. So the cloud-native build packs is a new standard. And what you see on the far left of this screen is you see very clearly those layers that we've been talking about on the Cloud Foundry side for some time. So we've got the base operating system, we've got the runtime layer, and we've got the app layer. And build packs have for a long time allowed the platform team, who are responsible for security and compliance, to control the layers beneath, where the app team is just providing the layer on top. Well, the OCI standard, the new standards around the container format, actually have a first-class notion, a first-class understanding of those layers. So there's great things that are happening there as well. But what the build service adds to that is it says, OK, now with a clear understanding of those different layers, I'm going to watch for changes in any of those layers and go ahead and rebuild the container whenever I need to. And then we can take that all the way to deployment.
Excellent. Prod is our favorite place to be.
Exactly. It's all about enabling developers to get to prod more easily, more rapidly, to the point that you made about the DORA study.
Yeah, and I would just say customer feedback on this has been unbelievable. There's people that maybe didn't know Pivotal as well yet, but they'd adopted Kubernetes and they had the intuitions around the build service immediately. I think this is going to be a ubiquitous technology.
Yep. All right, and let me show you one final example. And as you all know, those of you who are using Cloud Foundry today, it's all about app teams being self-sufficient. And going back to being able to release frequently, as in the DORA report, any time that you need to do something where you're not totally self-sufficient, that slows down deployments. So let me give you a very concrete example. Again, Kubernetes brings you this great substrate. Now, every time you're going to spin up a cluster, or any time you deploy a workload, you can wire things up so that load balancers are automatically created for you. But with the creation of a load balancer, you've also got to create a DNS record, right? How does that happen? Via ticket? Everything slows down. So what we're doing is we are bringing what we've learned about dynamic routing, and by dynamic routing, I mean, first of all, that this is a routing capability that is much more aware of the cloud-native patterns. The fact that containers only live for an average of 4 days, not 4 weeks or 4 months.
Yeah.
Right? So the IP addresses are constantly changing, so that dynamic routing capability has to be there. But the other element is that that capability needs to be tenant-aware, so that you can do something like give an app team the ability to control DNS naming in their own environment. So that's an important capability that we bring as well. And so this allows teams to work autonomously and based on some of the other things we talked about as well, securely.
I think that's fantastic. The customers we've engaged with, the excitement around the continued evolution of the holistic platform, and also meeting thousands of new customers who might be starting off with our components. It's a really exciting time.
Exactly. So really the story is this, is that everything that we've learned over the last 6 or 7 years, that we've learned in the app space, keeping CF Push sacred, is we're bringing that over into the Kubernetes, but then we're also able to layer, basically take advantage of the things, as you pointed out, the 6 folks that were up on the slide have a much richer set of primitives on which they can build that higher level experience.
Absolutely, Cornelia. I think it's an exciting time. If you think about what we can build over the next 8 years compared to the last 8 years, starting with nothing, now we're starting with this incredible cloud-native ecosystem. It truly is an unbelievable time to be in this market.
It is. Great.
Thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank
It's
you.
great to have you up here. Thank you. She has been such a leader for our customers. When she speaks to our customers about what they should do next, the gravity in the room is palpable. And she had a book on her chest. That is her book, Cloud Native Patterns. You should all go out and check it out. She'd be happy to sign it for you. Yeah. Go, Cornelia. So have a few minutes here to wrap up on a few comments I'm sharing at the start. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, now that we can get developers to production with Spring Boot, are we done? This one's a funny one. You're supposed to laugh at the neck-and-neck race for number one between Spring Boot and Spring MVC. Thank you. 1 out of 4,000. But I don't think we're done there. I think there's this other phenomena that's happening. If you look at start.spring.io, there's 15 million projects a year starting there now. Friday night, alone in my house on my laptop, I'm doing the math. That's approximately a project every 2 seconds is kicking off on start.spring.io. And I think what makes that more remarkable is how wired it is into this new open source design ecosystem. If you look through start.spring.io, you see the latest new trends. You see everything in cloud databases and open source databases. You see Kafka streaming. Some of these things we're going to talk about. And I think it's not just the success of Spring as a web framework, but also as this connective, integrating tissue to everything that's happening in an open source enterprise that's so exciting. And start.spring.io is the very center of that. So I think that gives us a responsibility. And the responsibility is to continue our march, to do more and more for enterprises in their architecture. We've had success of bringing microservices and a more decomposed architecture to the best enterprises in the world. But some of them today, if I'm honest, they look like this, which is that we've refactored some of the functions out of their monoliths. We've made them auto-scaling. We've enabled teams to unleash their human potential and deliver for clients. But there's a lot left to refactor. And a lot of that has to do with data and integration. I'm going to close briefly on some of the things that the Spring platform is doing in that space. The first one that I've talked about a lot is that we've learned through 500 app transformation engagements with clients that there is a pattern of tell, don't ask, of event-first design, of domain-driven business thinking that enables teams to truly cooperate and interoperate together. And one of the big open source things at the heart of that in enterprises today is Kafka. In the past, there were all these proprietary vendors that wanted to sell you their proprietary way of connecting things. And now Kafka has emerged this open community that enables developers to build both data pipelines and microservices. So we think big investments in Spring streaming and in bringing Kafka to the Pivotal platform is the right next move for us to start to take on data processing and data-driven microservices in a meaningful way with clients. As a point of news, we announced this week, Confluent just released a blog of their platform is now GA on our container service. So that's a very exciting piece of work. People excited about this? The other thing that's happened is that our app transformation team has started to take on Kafka-first redesigns of complex data problems. And one of my favorite things in my inbox right now is the results back from those early tests. And they say something in them. It's like, we turned all of this complex data architecture into just another boot application, and it's so much simpler. And boy, that gets me fired up. But there's other things in enterprises, to close on this, that are not just another boot application. The API gateway has been a stranglehold for some teams where they're trying to ship their microservice, but the API team has to go approve it. They can't continuously deliver changes to that. There's complex scripting that happens there. Some of the applications I see are surrounded by proprietary ESBs with proprietary packaged ETL, and while the developer can write their code, they can't really control enough of the environment around them that they need to. So we're applying our litmus test to API gateways, and Spring Gateway has become this emerging, exciting place of innovation for enterprises. This is another example where developers lead us. Developers started writing to us that, hey, we're using Spring Gateway as opposed to these packaged API products. And we're moving faster, and we're not having to ask for permission as often or with as much friction. And it could just be another microservice that gives us rate-limiting authorization, transformations, and filters. Why isn't that just more Java programming for us? And Spring Gateway is an exciting change in that space. And we're following on by making investments of turning it into more and more of an enterprise product. And we're saying, yeah, the gateway can just be another Spring Boot application. We will make it enterprise ready. We will integrate it with authorization. We will bring service discovery and API documentation to the product. So I think that's really exciting, and I encourage everyone to check out Spring Gateway. So we want to go from a world that looks like this today to this. Our bet, if there's one message in everything that we're saying today, our bet is on you. You are the most important people in an enterprise today, the people that can continuously deliver the applications, the people that can write that business-changing code and get it to production and learn. And we want the world to look more like the intuitive approach that you're already used to with Spring Boot for everything you need to do to get your job done in the enterprise. We have people like this. That's my bet. It's also a bet of another company that I'm going to welcome to the stage now, who's building their cloud. If you could pop the slide for me. A little company in Seattle called Microsoft called us and said, we'd like to make Spring Boot and Spring Cloud a first-class citizen on Azure. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Ryan Morgan, who leads our Spring team, to tell us more about that along with Microsoft.
Great. Thank you, James, for that warm welcome. I'm so excited to be here today to talk about our growing partnership with Microsoft. John, thank you for being here today.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here as well. Hey, I think we've been in partnership for about 3 years, haven't we?
Yes.
And during that time, we've seen tremendous growth of the Pivotal platform on Azure. And we've done a lot of work together to kind of bring some of our largest customers and their biggest workloads onto Azure and give them tremendous control over that experience. And that's important to us, I think, because Azure has been growing tremendously. And it's now in about 95%, I think, of the Fortune 500. And a lot of those customers, they're bringing their Java workloads onto Azure. And as they bring those Java workloads onto Azure, we see more and more Spring coming to Azure. It's really hard these days to talk to a Java customer and not hear Spring. And that has increased the importance for us of figuring out how we deliver an awesome Spring experience on Azure.
That's right, John. And a lot of that's rooted in open source as well. Companies want to have open standards, open APIs. And the Spring and Microsoft teams have been working really hard on delivering those via integrations with Spring Cloud and Spring Boot to ensure that applications running on Azure can connect and work with all the various services that are native on Azure.
Yeah, we've created a ton of integrations so that Spring developers coming to Azure can take advantage of the Azure native capabilities. And we've also done a lot of work with start.spring.io to make sure that initial experience is incredibly smooth. But where do we go from here? Like, what can we do that's better? I think in the last conversation that we had, we started to hear from customers more and more about how we can reduce friction. How do we make it even easier to bring those Spring applications onto Azure? How do we make it a delightful experience for our mutual customers? And as inside Microsoft, we started to wonder how we did that. We kind of said, we've had a great experience working with Pivotal. Let's partner with Pivotal again, and let's figure out how to deliver something really game-changing.
And today we're very excited that Microsoft with Pivotal are announcing Azure Spring Cloud, a fully managed offering for running your Spring applications on Azure.
That's right. This is a jointly developed service that we are running on Azure. It is fully managed. It is built on top of our Kubernetes service, Azure Kubernetes service. So it is a hyperscale service, but it is completely managed. It does everything Spring Cloud would do that you expect. It has the service registry, the gateway, everything. You can bring your applications unchanged onto Azure. And we've also partnered with Pivotal to make sure that we bring in their key technology that you were just hearing about, the Pivotal build service.
That's right. And as you're saying, zero code changes, integrates directly with all the services that you use on Azure, databases, messaging, caching systems, and comes out of the box with monitoring and tracing via Azure App Insights, but also supports all the familiar tools that you use day to day, like Datadog, New Relic, etc.
Yep. But I think we might have been talking too much, and maybe we should actually show the audience a little bit of what this might look like.
You do a demo?
Why don't we invite onto stage Emily from Pivotal and Julianne from Microsoft to give us a demo of what this could look like.
So hi, everybody. I'm Julien Dubois from Microsoft, and I work on Azure.
And I'm Emily Casey. I'm an engineer at Pivotal. And today, we are going to be demoing deployment of an application composed of microservices to Spring Cloud Azure. So I know what features I want from a platform, but I'm fairly new to the Spring Cloud Azure user interface. So Julian's going to walk me through how I can accomplish my goals using this new product. So let's get started. I believe you already have the source code for the application?
Yeah. So Emily sent me, I think, 4 microservices, 1 gateway, and I had to deploy everything on Azure Spring Cloud. So let me go to my cluster overview. So that's a new service. So we've got quite a lot of menus, so we will try to show the most relevant one, as we've got only 10 minutes. If I go to the apps here, we can see we've got your 4 microservices and your gateway. They're all running in Azure Spring Cloud, all managed.
This looks great, but can we see the application actually running?
Yeah, so let me open up the gateway. Sorry. Let me open up the gateway. And here, we can see your application running. So let me log in. So your app is running.
This looks great, but I actually made an update to this app. I replaced the Benjamin Franklin image with something a little bit flashier. I'd like to deploy that new updated version. And if you don't mind, I'd like to try it out myself using the Azure command line, because I'm personally more comfortable in the terminal.
Yeah, so I began by showing the graphical user interface, but everything can be scripted with the Azure command line. And I know you're more comfortable with it. So I already built your app. It's just with Maven, so you don't do much. And I put you in the right directory. And with the Azure command line, I'm going to let you do a blue-green deployment live on the cluster.
All right, so I have the Azure command line, and I got the Spring Cloud plugin here. So let's see what I can do. Looks like I can work with an application. That's great. That's exactly what I want. What I want to do is create a deployment. So I'm going to say deployment, create. This is for the gateway app.
Yeah, you need to add your ad name.
And I'm going to give the name of my deployment. Let's call this green, because we're going to do a blue-green deployment with it later. And of course, I need the path to my source code. I believe we have a jar on the file system here. Yeah. All right, let's get that started. So while this is running, I have some questions about the deployment that we were looking at earlier. How are all of my microservices wired together? I'm assuming there's some sort of service discovery. What did you have to do to get that set up?
Yeah, so let's have a look on our cluster. So we've got our 4 microservices. We've got our gateway. And as you can see, we've got a discovery status, which is up for everything. So there's a Spring Cloud registry, which is running. It is fully managed, fully secured. It's in high availability. In fact, it's a cluster. And basically, you don't do anything. You just connect to it, and it's working, and it's managed, and it's supported also both by Pivotal and by Microsoft.
So it's important to me to keep my configuration for my application separate from my application source. I want to be able to update it without redeploying. How can I do that using Spring Cloud Azure?
Yeah, so that's the second main service that we have. We've got a config server, so it's the next menu. As we can see here, this is also a Spring Cloud config server. It's fully managed, fully secured, clustered, the same thing as a registry, and it's connected here. So here I'm using a token. You can also use SSH. And it's connected here to a Git repository where you've got your Spring Boot configuration. So you can just edit your files, commit them, push them, and then your app's configuration will be automatically updated.
That looks great. And you've said this is managed for me, so I don't need to worry about managing or operating these two Spring Cloud components we're using, the config server and the service discovery.
No, you get nothing to. It's like the apps also. The apps are built by our build service, and the OS, the JVM, everything is managed for you. So you don't see Kubernetes, you just see apps, and they are managed for you. You just run them.
Awesome. So let's imagine I'm getting a lot of traffic to my gateway, and I want to scale up the instances. How can I do that using this product?
Yeah. So once again, everything is managed for you. You really need to see that as a platform as a service, where everything is managed. So if I go to our gateway, I can scale it here. So I'm going to do it with a graphical interface. So I can do, for example, I can put more CPU. I can put more RAM, more instances. And I just save this. This is going to restart my gateway with more CPU, for example, here. You can also do it just command line, so you can script it. And in the near future, we'll also have auto-scalability, like in all Azure services. You just click one button, it auto-scales for you. So you don't really care about it. It's just done for you.
I'm expecting to have customers all over the world, and I want to make sure my account service is connected to a geographically distributed database. Can you explain to me how services bindings are going to work?
Yeah, so let's have a look at your account service. So here we've got service bindings. So currently it's connected to a MongoDB database. So let me delete it just to show how it's working. I'm going to connect it to a Cosmos DB database. So Cosmos DB is API compatible with MongoDB, so it's going to work the same way. But it's a geographically distributed database. So here we are in the US. We can also replicate it in France, because I'm French, so I like it. And in South Korea. And I can just save it. And it's going to distribute my data all over the world. So it's ID secured. And here, I'm going to create a service binding. I'll create Cosmos. Cosmos. It's automatically finding my database. So here I've got SpringOne Platform. My API is MongoDB. The database is Piggymetrics, so it's my app. Here we've got the key. I just create this, and this is going to bind automatically my app to the database. So I've got highly available application, ID secured, which is also connected to a highly available database.
I imagine our new deployment must be done by now. Let's do a blue-green deploy so users can see the updated version.
Yeah.
All right. So let's use the Azure command line again. Talking about an app, I want to set the deployment this time. The name of the app is the gateway, and I'm going to use the green deployment. Let's give it a go.
Yes. So this takes about 2 seconds, so I'm going fast because I want to take risk. So this is the old image, and this is redeployed. So if I just restart it, we're having the new image arriving.
Ah, that looks
incredible.
Great. I love it.
Deployment on stage.
Yeah. So everything's working well right now, but let's imagine, something goes wrong, there's an issue in the future. How do I look at the logs for my microservices?
Yeah. So, of course, you can have issues with your app, like any apps. So let's have a look at Azure Monitor. So that's a service which is provided by Azure, which is probably, well, to me, of very high value on top of Azure Spring Cloud. Because Azure Monitor is very complete. So let's have a look first at the most obvious screen, the logs. Here we've got all your Spring Boot logs arriving, and you can query them. So we've got like a SQL-like language with auto-completion. Hang on, because it's an English keyboard. So I can say, oh, I only want stuff from my gateway. Oh, sorry. There's an E. And, oh, sorry, and run it. And so you can drill down and have more detailed information on what's happening in your app.
This looks great. In addition to logs, I also obviously care about metrics. I want to monitor the health of my components.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Of course, so logs is useful, but metrics is also very important. So when you go to the metrics screen, you've got access to the metrics from the OS, from the JVM, and from Micrometer, so from all Spring Boot. So it's very neat tool to have detailed information on what's happening in your app. I will just have a look at the memory of your app. So we can see, oh, you're not using a lot of memory. You're using 30 megabytes. We've got 1 gig, so your app is doing good. So that's everything's great for you.
Given that this is a microservice architecture, just the logs and the metrics for the individual components aren't going to be sufficient for me. I care about data like the average request times between my components, things like that. How can I investigate that sort of information?
Yeah, also, I see you do lots of microservices. What we've just seen is good for monoliths, but for a microservice, issues are much more complex than that, so you want to have distributed tracing. This also is fully managed, and it works out of the box without doing anything. I'm going to take the logs for the last 30 days to have more info than just the last hour. So your applications are automatically instrumented, so this graph works automatically. I didn't do anything. And we can see we've got different microservices. They are all connected. And we can have information on the number of calls and the performance of those calls. Is everything good for you?
That particular request looks pretty slow. Can we drill down?
Yeah, this one is like nearly 1 second. So if I click here, I can investigate the failures or investigate the performance issue. So I can just drill down. I have more information on what's happening in your app. So we can see that here you've got a post request, which is rather slow. So maybe you need to investigate that, or maybe we need to scale up the service. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like I have enough data here that I can use this to optimize my app later. But thank you so much for showing me around. That's been a great experience.
And thank you so much for doing all the typing.
My pleasure.
High five.
Great job. All right. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Emily. That was fantastic. So the private preview is open today. There's a link up here where you can sign up for that. You can also learn more this week. We have sessions. There's 2 sessions tomorrow. And then, of course, we'd love to see you in either the Pivotal or Microsoft booth to learn more. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Technology Director, Pivotal, Jürgen Holler.
Right. Hello, everybody, from my side. Hello, Austin. So my pleasure to do a bit of a preview on what we're working, a state-of-the-art recap, and a bit of a preview. Of course, as the Spring Framework project lead, I very much represent a core framework perspective. But even within all our efforts at the core framework level, of course, we're very theme-driven, very aligned with themes and trends in the industry. So our common tagline, modern software at the intersection of architecture and people. This is very much what Spring has always been about, ever since its inception. Spring is essentially a toolbox for architectures, for architects, where we are empowering development teams to build, to handcraft architectures according to the business needs, the business purposes, and integrating with all the services, the infrastructure in the enterprise. This is, of course, 15 years ago. The enterprise landscape looked quite different from what it looks like today, but Spring is still very much hanging on to this core mission, to this core role of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Modern-day Spring is enabling a, modern-day developer experience for distributed architectures on the Java virtual machine, in a nutshell. And distributed architectures, of course, they can come in many flavors. We are talking about modular monoliths, just interacting with enterprise messaging systems, with the common data stores, all the systems that we need in order to turn our business applications into kind of real-life happenings. We are also talking, of course, about microservice architectures. We are talking about interconnected processes in potentially a very fine-grained fashion. So it's a very diverse landscape. The developer experience that we mean comes in many flavors as well. It comes with, of course, first-class support for the Java language, for the Kotlin language these days. It comes in an annotation-based component model. It comes with a functionally styled programmatic registration and interaction model, in particular a focus in recent Spring Framework generations. And it comes with a choice of runtime stack options, most prominently, of course, the servlet-based Spring MVC versus the reactive Spring Webflux stack. So many flavors of it all. Our Spring Framework 5.2 release, recently gone generally available, and the upcoming Spring Boot 2.2 release very much continue along those lines. They take our common Spring 5 themes to the next level, and a particular focus of these releases, of the Spring Framework 5.2 release, is to open up new possibilities in terms of architectural options. So we go into territory that we haven't quite been in before, and we allow for the latest innovations in the Java ecosystem at large to become a part of modern-day Spring-based applications. There's really three main themes along those lines. Many of our efforts, in our recent efforts, go along those lines. The developer experience we've already mentioned is, of course, very much about embracing the latest language-level innovation, both in Java itself and in other languages on the JVM, such as Kotlin. The distributed architectures, of course, referring back to them again here, is very much about embracing, well, enterprise infrastructure in all its flavors, right? And all the innovation and the potential game changes that come along from there. Runtime efficiency is, of course, particularly important in the Java space for making sure that the interaction between the application frameworks, the Java virtual machine, the underlying operating system, the underlying host system, the underlying cloud infrastructure, that it is as efficient as possible. We have a strong focus on performance improvements in recent Spring Framework and Spring Boot generations. We are, of course, also looking forward to where the Java infrastructure will be in over the next few years to come. So let's break this down a bit more. Oops. There we go. So this is just a bit of a visual impression of what we do in Kotlin these days. This is very, very recent. Spring Framework 5.2 comes with quite comprehensive Kotlin coroutine support for Webflux in particular. This is a good example, a fine example for a language-level innovation, a language-level feature in Kotlin interacting with our common Webflux stack underneath the covers, providing an interesting way of consuming the reactive facilities that we developed over recent years through a style of implementation that is actually quite imperative. So these are Kotlin coroutines, also called suspending functions. Very sweet also in terms of expressiveness, even more so if you take into account that it interacts with the underlying Webflux stack, providing full support for all the reactive goodness, of course, the reactive stream spec pressure model, etc. We have a strong focus on infrastructure integration recently. We have RSocket as a very promising binary messaging protocol that we are embracing with strong industry support at this point already. RSocket is an interesting piece of technology. It comes with a whole range of interaction models, predefined interaction models, support for all sorts of transport layers. It comes with a set of unique features, session resumption, well, stream-level back pressure for a start. By the way, it comes with a Reactor-based Java client, so it's also very much aligned with Project Reactor and the reactive infrastructure that we've already been embracing in recent Spring generations. Somewhat related, we are also embracing R2DBC, a currently Pivotal-sponsored open source offering and abstraction for reactive relational database access. Basically a sort of JDBC rethinking for reactive streams-based architectures with all the goodness that comes with it, in particular back pressure support, and of course non-blocking interactions to begin with. We provide reactive transaction management, an interaction between Spring Framework 5.2's core transaction support and Spring Data's transaction manager implementations. There's reactive transaction support not only for R2DBC, but also for Mongo and Neo4j. As for runtime efficiency, there's a couple of very recent innovations in the Java virtual machine space. Of course, some of it comes from OpenJDK itself, our main line. Java, of course, is still our primary implementation language that we focus on, and OpenJDK is the primary runtime environment that we interact with for most Spring-based purposes. So OpenJDK, of course, has the OpenJDK 11 long-term support release in the meantime, which is our a main guideline. It's not our baseline. Our baseline is still Java 8, JDK 8. There's also a very recently OpenJDK 13 went generally available. And with the Spring Framework 5.2 boot to the 2 generation, we allow you to choose to use JDK 13 underneath a Spring Boot to the 2 based application, Spring Framework 5.2 based application, at this point already, right? So it's basically a choice of 8, 11, or even the very recent 13, if there's something particularly interesting for you in there. At the same time, there's a very interesting, not so traditional JVM offering from Oracle. GraalVM had its first GA release this year. GraalVM is a sort of a new kind of virtual machine offering with a next-generation JIT compiler that also made it into recent OpenJDK releases as an option, just allowing us to run our workloads, Spring-based applications, Spring-based workloads in a more efficient manner without any changes, any constraints, any considerations. A very transparent benefit simply through upgrading to OpenJDK and choosing a corresponding setup for it. GraalVM has many other interesting features, the Truffle language adaptation framework, but in particular also a native image facility. Graal Native is a tool for turning certain kinds of Java-based applications into native images, coming with a couple of characteristics such as very immediate startup, lower memory consumption, with some trade-offs and many constraints in place. And we are very much tracking the effort already, collaborating with the GraalVM group at Oracle towards a well-defined arrangement for using Spring-based facilities, building certain kinds of Spring-based applications with a native image deployment model in mind. All right, so much for our 3 themes, and we continue along those lines. So expect Spring Framework 5.3 and Spring Boot 2.3 to continue what we've started, RSocket plus a completion of our Kotlin coroutines offering, and so forth. And of course, there's always new JDK generations coming along. By the time we will have OpenJDK 14, 15 in all likelihood, and we will have the GraalVM 20 release, a very important milestone that we intend to integrate with next year. Now, I'll leave you with a couple of breakout sessions. Recommendations for sessions today, all of them are later today, towards the themes that I've been mentioning, such as Kotlin, RSocket, R2DBC, and the hint at the GraalVM native image model. And with that said, it's my pleasure to welcome Ben onto the stage.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm here to talk about the state of JVM runtime support. As we all know, this last year has been really interesting for the JVM. The changes to the licensing that Oracle has done has led to a ton of confusion in the market, right? Oracle has decided that they're not going to do public updates to their JVM any longer. And effectively, what this means for you is that if you want to run Oracle's JVM in production, you have to have a commercial relationship with Oracle. As you might predict, there are a ton of companies out there who immediately sense this as a business opportunity. And so we've already seen fragmentation in the market. There are so many OpenJDK variants now coming to the market. And here at Pivotal, we don't really think that this is going to be a great thing, right? Many of us are old enough that we actually saw fragmentation in the Java market the first time round, and it didn't go great. So we want to make sure here at Pivotal, our view is that this isn't positive. What we want actually is a strong, healthy, and most importantly, unified Java ecosystem. Right? We want consistency so that your Spring application or any of the other frameworks that you might use inside of the Java ecosystem run exactly the same, run consistently, regardless of the platform that you've chosen to deploy them on. This is how we view Pivotal winning, right? That Java stays strong. And Pivotal itself is putting its money where its mouth is. I'm proud to announce that we are platinum sponsors of Adopt OpenJDK. For those of you who don't know what this is, Adopt OpenJDK is a free and open binary distribution of OpenJDK. Right? It is built from the same community-sanctioned GA tags as all of the rest of these kinds of distributions, all of these variants. It applies 0 patches, right? And this aligns really, really well with our view on how OpenJDK should be run and should be used. And the really nice thing about Adopt OpenJDK is it turns out it's really, really popular, right? Already there are 77 million downloads and Docker pulls of Adopt OpenJDK JVMs. This is a huge number given how small, how young the Adopt OpenJDK project is. And just sort of as a side note, I'm really, really happy to see Java 11 with that kind of uptake this early in its life cycle. If you're not taking a look at Java 11, please start doing it. It's really going to be great for you. So we say that this aligns really, really well with our commitment, and it aligns so well that we've already begun migrating all of our Cloud Foundry customers onto Adopt OpenJDK. We've long had a Pivotal distribution of OpenJDK that we've shipped and our customers have used for nearly 6 years, but we think Adopt OpenJDK is such a good idea, we're already migrating all those customers. And we also have a commitment internally to make sure that any Java-based project that Pivotal is shipping to customers will also be running on Adopt OpenJDK as quickly as we can do it. All that being said, Adopt OpenJDK being this free and open thing, that's great, right? That's what we believe in. But we also realize there are a bunch of customers out there who really want a commercial relationship with their Java vendor. And for those people, I'm happy to announce the Pivotal Spring Runtime. Pivotal Spring Runtime is a single SKU offering for OpenJDK, Spring, and Tomcat. This is, if you're sitting in this room, almost certainly the stack you're already running, things you already need support for, right? So we're gonna have support for that. If you're already a Pivotal Cloud Foundry customer, great. This gets rolled into your purchase, right? And all of your containers running on Cloud Foundry now have OpenJDK, Spring, and Tomcat support. But we're also aware that many of you aren't exclusively on Pivotal Cloud Foundry, and that's okay, right? You have widely varying environments, but you want a single vendor to support your entire footprint, no matter how you're running it. And so Pivotal Spring Runtime has you covered on this, right? We will support any server-side platform, infrastructure, or cloud that you've chosen to use, right? So with that, let me just say, If you are interested in Pivotal Spring Runtime or our commitment to the open community at Adopt Open JDK, please feel free to stop by our booth. And if you really want the minutia of Open JDK distributions, go ahead and find me during the conference, and I'll be happy to bore you to death. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President, Trailhead Evangelism, Salesforce, Leah McGowan-Hare.
All right, let me just set the stage before I get started. I need everybody in here to up-level their thinking for a moment. We're gonna take a little curve away from getting real granular into technology. We'll talk tech, but I want to talk about people. I want to up-level it to people. And before I do, I just want to take a moment to thank all of the organizers, one, for inviting me. And I have to say, I'm really loving this new no swag thing, swagless. I mean, I'm always going to have swag. But I mean, swagless, less waste, more good. So how many people are enjoying that? All right, good. So I really enjoyed that innovation. Thank you. And I'm passing it on to other companies. So let's talk a little bit about empowering people in this modern technology. Now, as we know, we have all seen this slide at some level at some point in our career. We are in the fourth industrial revolution. Technology innovation is happening now. It's happening at a rapid speed. And there's a huge impact across all of it. We've seen the changes come from physical as well as digital, right? We've seen the physical from the robotics to 3D printing. My kids love 3D printing. Digital, the AI. AI is built into everything we do. How many of you all use Grammarly? Have you seen their new feature called Tone Detector? As you're typing an email, it will say, ooh, your tone is very, very strong or very friendly. So it has eliminated a lot of arguments for me. So, I mean, that is AI built into everyday life that is beneficial to all, especially techies like me who can't really write that well. So VR, we've seen all kind of virtual reality. We all know that these are the changes that we are seeing. And this poses a question, right? As these changes are coming, and they're coming rapidly, they're coming quickly, the degree to which we individually as well as collectively embrace and or resist these changes will really determine our trajectory. So I'm going to let that sit there for a second. What does that mean? Well, we've all been on the side of either embracing and rejecting sort of these different changes. Now, I can take an educated guess that everybody in this room and all of our live streamers are people who not only embrace technology changes, you all are making the technology changes. You all are the creators of it. If you are not directly, you are the ones creating the infrastructure in which these technology changes live on and grow on. So we understand that. But what about those that are not? What about that fixed mindset? Now, there are degrees of this. We all have been there at some level. I mean, I have been there at some level. When I was once upon a time a developer for a company called PeopleSoft, I'm dating myself, and I had to make that jump from on-prem development to cloud development, there was some resistance for me. I just was like, I'm not feeling this whole cloud thing. What do you mean I don't have access to this? What do you mean there's no select star, I have to explicitly say which fields I want? That's some BS, right? I had to go through it. I'm being honest. No judgment here. This is an open environment. Open source, open environment. So I am sharing with you sort of how my fixed mindset. We all have seen this. Why do people own that? Well, change, as we know, can be uncomfortable, it can be ambiguous, and it can be disruptive. I mean, think about it. When technology productizes a service, it replaces a person whose identity, professional identity, was tied to that service. And it can add questions for them, questions on their identity, their value proposition, their personal brand. I mean, take, for example, LegalZoom. LegalZoom offers a lot of services that were once offered by a lawyer in the community. And then there's companies like Ross Intelligence, built on IBM Watson, that does all legal research. That takes care of legal researchers. So it runs the gamut, and we have to understand why people are coming in with this fixed mindset and what the scare is behind that. But this is not our first time at the technology rodeo. We've seen this before. We've seen these changes before. So now I'm going to have a little history question here. By show of hands, who recognizes this person? Oh, we got some work to do. All right, that's all right, that's all right, no judgment. So how many people have seen Hidden Figures? Ooh, we really got some work to do. For those that did not put their hands up, you have homework assignment. So this woman, Dorothy Vaughan, worked at NACA, which was National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, which then transitioned into NASA. So she was a calculator. Because as some of you may know, back in the day, there were no calculators. They hired the most brilliant mathematical minds to be the calculators. And they figured out the algorithms. They were the original AI. Now, as things became automated, IBM brought in these huge calculators, not the calculators you're thinking in your hands. What she's standing in front of is a calculator. But somebody needed to program this. So when this happened, Dorothy didn't sit there and ask disempowering questions. Oh, why me? What am I going to do? She was like, oh, no, I know what I'm going to do. Somebody needs to know how to program these things. This is programmed in Fortran. So I'm going to learn how to do that. And somebody needs to check the output of these calculators. Somebody needs to QA it. So she got on the bandwagon, but here's the thing. She didn't get on it alone. She trained others. She brought others along with her. And I think that is so, I take that back. I know that is so important, especially today, especially now. We need to ensure we are bringing others along with us. This is important, and we all care about this. Why? For the most basic business reason, we have hiring needs. How many people in here are hiring managers? Right? So here, and if you're not, you will be at one point, but if you don't have the people with the skill set that you're looking for, you're going to have a gap. We need to ensure that all these wonderful innovations you're creating, all of these apps you're creating, that there is a pool of people that can support the life cycle of these, that can use these applications. So from a hiring need, you need it. We want diverse teams. Now listen, I'm not here to talk to you about diversity 101. We know it's a problem. Look to your left, look to your right. I'm telling you it's an issue, right? I'm not here to sell you on how to fix it. We know that that is an issue. We can talk about that afterward. But we also know that it is important in making sure as we're bringing people along, we're doing it with the lens of inclusivity. And also, the most basic, we got family and friends that need those skills. We all got that one cousin, that one aunt, that one family member who's always looking for the next job. Well, you need to help them get the skills to have a job that's sustainable so they can stop borrowing money and get out your basement. You know I'm not lying. We all got that one, right? So we understand why this is important. So how do we do it? How do we lift as we climb? How do we curate as we create? Now, what does that mean? How many people here have self-taught themselves a programming language? It could be Python. Keep your hands up. It could be Java. It could be JavaScript. You two on the live stream. So keep your hands up. Now, of those people, how many of you all documented how you learned that? Look at that. That's knowledge gone. That process that you did, you could have easily shared with somebody else to help them learn. So we all have something to give. And we know we all have to ensure, we have to keep that at the top of mind as we go on this journey, is how are we curating as we create? How am I sharing this knowledge going forward? And we can all do this, and it's a responsibility of all. I'm sure you've heard one of the co-CEOs of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, say, business is the biggest platform for change. We can do this at an individual level, and we can also do it at a collective level. At Salesforce, one of the ways that we do it is with Trailhead. Trailhead is our free online learning platform where people can go to learn the skills that they need for jobs today and tomorrow. You can learn Salesforce skills, but you can also learn very non-Salesforce skills, technical skills, like how to build an automated CI/CS plan all throughout there. You can learn AWS. You can learn GitHub. You can also learn non-technical skills, because you need those too, right? Soft skills on presentation, on how to write, on Agile. You can learn all of that, and it is free. It is free. Now, you may be thinking, why is it free? Because once again, we believe that if we don't have people with the skills, our innovations will fall flat. So how do you scale up people at scale, at a large? You do it with a free platform. So I encourage you all, please check out Trailhead. It's pretty amazing. You can also learn about Heroku, who I know is also out here too. Shout out to Heroku. Now, you don't have to do it. You don't have to be a big company to do this. You don't have to be huge to do this. We can all do this individually. Everybody has a platform to make change. Like I tell people, Beyonce did not start at Coachella, right? She started at the local talent shows. You can start somewhere. Use the platform that you have today. We are all teachers. The example that I just used earlier, that you all, who taught themselves a language, if that were documented, you could write a blog about it, right? You could share, this is some of the things that I've learned, right, as I was going through. Here's some of the things you might want to not do. Here's some of the things that were helpful. You can also answer questions in the community. How many people are active in the Pivotal community out there online? Oh, we got some work to do. Okay. So there's questions out there. People have questions. You have knowledge to share. You want to collaborate. Also, you can present at conferences like this. Now, here's the thing. The onus does not fall solely on you individually. We need all of our leaders in these organizations, all of our managers, to create a space where you can allow for employees to do each one, teach one, to allow them to create a space to do knowledge share. But if they are so pressed with deadlines, they are so pressed with code freeze, they're not going to create that space. It is up to you to do that and to drive the importance of it. So not only just say it, but actually reward people who are doing it, because that is important. Our knowledge is not here to hoard for ourselves. It is here to share and bring others along. You can also do it where meeting people where they're at, right? When you are in the space of helping bringing people along, you have to meet people where they are. What does that mean? Focus on connecting and not projecting. When you're working with people, you want to connect with them to understand where they're at before you start projecting where you think they should be, right? I think you should be on Slack and not using email. Well, I prefer to use email. So you got to understand where people are at. That's just an example, right? You also want to make sure that you are silencing your judgment. Silencing your judgment. I know I have worked with developers. I have been one. I think once you're a developer, you're always a developer. But I have been one, and I know that I could be a little, technical snobby, like, you don't know that? Okay. Silence that judgment as you are helping people along, collaborating. People are at different places in their journey. In order to help them get to that next level, you got to meet them where they are. And also, stay close, not closed off. I love this statement by a gentleman named Brian Stevenson. Anybody know who Brian Stevenson is by show of hands? His movie's coming out next year called Mercy. He's a civil rights attorney. And he talks about serving people, you have to do it with the power of proximity. You have to be in the space of understanding where they are. You can't serve people from sitting afar and saying, oh, those people, this is what they need. But understanding what people need and how they need it. An example, I know of a company that donated these great laptops and iPads to a school. Brand new, top one. And they sat there in the room because the teachers did not understand how to build it into their curriculum. So it's no point of having the technology if the people don't have the knowledge. But had somebody gone in to understand where they were, they could have found a better way. So the next thing that the company did to rectify it was put the teachers through training and then allow them to use the technology. So meet people where they are. Volunteer your time and resources. Volunteering is so important, and it doesn't have to be this separate thing that you do, right? Share your gifts and talents. Everybody in here has a gift, has a talent. Find a way that you can share it to inspire others to share theirs. You can start internally at your own company with knowledge share and extend it out to your community. But that is your responsibility. You are not here to hoard your gifts and talents. You are here to share and inspire others. Also, volunteer at a local school. People go, I don't know what to do. Just go to, I promise you, you go to the principal, they will give you work to do. Show up at their career day. Talk to them about what you do. A lot of times, These young people don't understand technology, and they think, particularly people who are people of color, young girls, they don't see themselves represented up there, and it's hard to achieve that which you cannot see. But if you go there and you talk to them about there is a place for everybody at the table, it might change their mind about it. So go and volunteer, look at schools, work with nonprofits, and you can work with nonprofits in many different ways. I did this here where I actually brought in Black Girls Code to Salesforce. They needed a space to host their event. I did that, and I actually was one of the instructors who taught the robotics course. And I brought my daughter. So in this picture, I'm actually handing my daughter a certificate for completing it. So you can make it a family affair, and it's a much more powerful meaning experience. And lastly, bring joy to what you do. Bring joy. How many people smiled when they saw that? I love that. I love that picture, right? That's how powerful a smile is. It empowers other people to smile. But bring joy to everything you do. Show gratitude. Show gratitude. If you wake up in the day grounded in gratitude, just thankful for something. Everybody has something to be thankful for. The mere fact you are sitting here, you have something to be thankful for. So every day, wake up, start your day grounded in gratitude. I guarantee it will change your trajectory of the day. Smile, always important. And as we learned, technology changes a lot of things, but it does not change human nature. So if one thing, remember, humankind just be both. With that, I thank you.
Well, that's a certainly hard to follow phrase. I don't have anything that great. What I do have is the privilege of introducing another customer speaker guest who I think you'll find some of his message resonate with the themes we've mentioned here so far today. He's my friend from TDA, Vijay Sankaran. And just a quick story, he was one of those early believers when it was way, way before microservices, continuous delivery, the regeneration of Java into Spring Boot really were obvious trends. And Vijay bet early with us and has really helped transform TDA into one of the leading technology companies in financial services. So listen to his message around microservices. I think you're going to find it's great. Just welcome to the stage, Vijay.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here at SpringOne to represent our story at TD Ameritrade to be the premier digital investing experience out there. And software is absolutely at the heart of everything that we do. So this has been an absolutely critical transformation for us. I remember meeting James at the Fire and Oak Bar in Jersey City back in 2014, where I think we were all in much different places in our lives at that time and talking about the future of platforms, microservices, innovation, and those have all become part of the core of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So just to give you a little bit of a snapshot of TD Ameritrade, we were founded in 1971 by the Ricketts family. For those of you who are Cub fans, it's the same Ricketts family. We've got about 9,000 employees distributed across the United States. We've done a number of key acquisitions. We merged with TD Waterhouse back in 2004. We acquired thinkorswim, which is an advanced trading platform, back in 2009. And most recently, Scottrade in 2017. We have, like I said, our goal is to really be the premier digital experience for investing out there, and I think we're well on our way to delivering on that promise. Financially, we're about a $5.5 billion company in fiscal year 18, and we are fairly profitable as well. So we've really enjoyed the growth in the investing space, really to drive self-directed investors as well as technology to support our registered investment advisors to support their clients as well. Just to give you a little bit of a snapshot, I know most of you are software engineers here. I have the fortune of being the head of technology of an almost all Java shop. We do have a little bit of .NET, but it certainly makes things a lot easier in terms of the Pivotal platform adoption. We utilize a lot of JavaScript. We utilize a lot of Java. We've got a number of other peripheral middleware type technologies like Kafka that we're looking at, Rabbit, and a whole bunch of other stuff. We are very much an Atlassian shop in terms of the whole ecosystem of software engineering. We just brought on Swagger Hub to help with our API development and manage all of our enterprise services in a single repository. We have the Pivotal platform, obviously, and we've built our own pipeline using the Zebia Labs product, but we're certainly investigating a lot of the new capabilities like Spinnaker that are coming as part of the overall Pivotal platform. One of the things that I'm most proud of as head of technology and CIO is the agile transformation that we undertook. I had done a previous agile transformation when I was the head of application development at Ford Motor Company, and when I came to TD Ameritrade and took on the CIO role, I felt that agile was really important in transforming us from being a traditional financial services company to being a financial innovator, a digital financial innovator. And it has proved that to be the real ingredient as part of that transformation. So when I first started this journey, we were about 5% agile back in 2016, and this year we surpassed 80% with almost 85% of our 1,000 software engineer workforce adopting agile practices and on agile teams. That's more than tripled our throughput in terms of value that we're delivering to our business partners. So it's been a pretty tremendous journey in terms of our transformation. So now what I wanted to share with you a little bit is the Pivotal story at TD Ameritrade. It started all the way back in 2014 with that beer with James, but it evolved over the 2017 to 2019 period when I really took over as the CIO. So in 2017, we had a little web mobile app that was outdated and it wasn't responsive. And I called this the seed in our transformation journey on our digital side. And so we decided to take a chance with Pivotal, used Pivotal Labs and set up an agile team over there in New York City. And they just absolutely loved the experience. Refactored what we called was our .mobi app, our web mobile app, and we launched a brand new app called TDAX. And TDAX is now the centerpiece for our entire digital experience on the retail side as we go forward. And our product owners loved it, and our software engineers loved it, and it was really a catalyst, I think, for all parts of our transformation. So that news spread like wildfire, and in 2017, the next macro process in our business is account opening and funding. And so that team said, hey, we don't have an application where you can really do A/B testing, get the right data and analytics. We want in on that Pivotal journey too. And so we sent a team off to Pivotal Labs again, and they came back with a modern account opening process that we call the new client experience. And we're fully rolling that out this year across all of our clients. Allows us to do more A/B testing, really simplify the account opening process, which is at the lifeblood of everything that we do. So if that wasn't enough, our institutional business said, hey, we have an outdated application for our clients. These are the clients of our independent advisors, and we want a new experience called Advisor Client. So again, we partnered with Pivotal Labs, sent a team out there. They learned the modern software engineering practices, paired programming, and in just a short 6-month time frame, came to market with a brand new MVP, and we are finishing out the features of that as we speak, and we're going to be rolling that out to all of the clients of all of the advisors later this year. And then finally, our trader group said that we haven't built a web-based advanced trading app in a long time. We have a new client base coming in Asia that is not going to want to use a desktop application, which does happen to be the preeminent trading platform for advanced traders. So what we did is we took the thinkorswim platform, which is our preeminent trading platform, abstracted it through microservices, and built a web-based interface that's responsive that we're going to be rolling out to all of our Asia-Pacific customers starting later this year. But that was built with the partnership with Pivotal Labs in Chicago. And that was a really great technical experiment in terms of engineering, because this is a very advanced app, requires real-time streaming of data, a lot of visualization on the UI layer, and it does really demonstrate the power of the platform. So as Trader X rolls out later this year, I encourage you all to take a look at it as we go forward. And then finally, this year we decided to open up the entire ecosystem of development. We've had 300 apps refactor and adopt the Pivotal platform in year one of opening the store for Pivotal to the entire business ecosystem. A lot of positive feedback. We've seen improvements in cycle time, at the rate of 50%. So it's been really exciting to see the progress of the team as we've gone forward. So as each of you are in different stages of your transformation, I would say some rules for the road. Maybe it's VJ's Hitchhiker's Guide to adopting the Pivotal platform. So for us, really the adoption of a microservices culture has been absolutely critical. And especially this year that has come to light as developers have gotten access to the platforms, they've been really beginning to refactor. But to really harness the power of the platform, you got to embrace microservices as part of your journey. Secondly, automation. And I know everyone's talked about this, but early on when we did our first app, I think a lot of the engineers were really happy in terms of, hey, I get to CF push. But if the back end in terms of the build and release automation isn't done and you're still going through a manual release process, that can be problematic. So automation as part of this journey is absolutely key. Thirdly, your alignment with DevOps. Infrastructure teams have their own minds. I apologize if I'm offending any infrastructure people in the room, but they like to engineer things. But you have to have alignment with your DevOps group in order to really understand elasticity, build in resilience on the platform, really put together the run books for recovery, because you are at the end of the day protecting your client and giving them capabilities, and you want to make sure the platform's up for all of them. So that alignment with DevOps is absolutely critical. Pivotal Labs. So as I told you in our journey and our story, we utilized Pivotal Labs a great deal as part of our overall transformation. But you got to internalize that when you really open up the storefront internally. And how do you take those best practices and make sure that they're ingrained as part of your culture? So this is as much a cultural transformation that needs to be driven from the leadership team as it is, just working with Pivotal Labs on a couple of apps. They helped us tremendously, but it needs to be part of your own DNA. Another thing that we're working on is platform as a service versus container as a service. So we need to really work as we go forward in this next phase to determine what's going to be a containerized Kubernetes app versus what's going to be part of the Pivotal platform. So we are working through that as we speak, but it's a big lesson that we've learned as part of this journey. And finally, the hardware-software stack. So we want to be in the business of engineering value for our customers and not in the business of engineering lots of widgets on the infrastructure. So really having a Pivotal-ready architecture has been a key part of our overall deployment and a part of our story. So now we offer free trading as well. So I encourage all of you to check out the premier digital investing experience, and you can abandon your Robinhood accounts and come over to TD Ameritrade. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Director, Technology, Pivotal, Andrew Clay Schaefer.
Hi, friends. Or should I say, howdy, y'all. I aspire to speak the native language of whoever I'm speaking with. It's an important point, and you might remember it later, but it's hard. Things are hard. Words are hard. So what's up, SpringOne? So this is me. Very important piece of information on this slide is the Twitter handle, which we'll also come back to at the very, very, very end. But moving forward, why? That's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Why? Why? Why am I here? Long time ago, 2002, I was a Sun certified Java developer. And then I went on this little adventure, and I did a lot of open source automation projects, and I contributed some books about DevOps and SRE, and I've been organizing the global DevOps Days event since 2009. And there's a bunch of other stories, and you can watch those videos online later. But that's enough framing. DevOps has been very good to me. Travel around the world, try to help people. That's 5 minutes from my house. If you want to come visit me, we could go for a walk. And this gave me some very unique understanding. So I spent this last decade helping people deliver software better with better software. And I had this very, very, very privileged perspective to watch the big web being built since about 2004 or 5. Like, I had a front row seat to watch a lot of these things being built. Tools that I was part of building were used inside Google to manage things, used inside Twitter. All these other things are like right there in front of me. And then I've been focused more and more on the enterprise for the last, say, 5 years as a part of the Pivotal journey. So being able to see these patterns across the industry has been quite a privilege. And hopefully I help someone along the way too, but I definitely. So why do I need to be here? And we'll come back to that. Because the real question is, why are you here? It's all about you. Everyone thinks or centers the universe on themselves. So this is all about you. Why are you here? Why do you need to be here? Oh, digital transformation, right? Like everyone says this word over and over. It sounds so nice. Like, this is what I think of when someone says that word. It's like pandas vomiting rainbows. So nice. But digital transformation is people, right? And we actually had a few speakers set this up a minute ago. People transformation is hard. Because we all have needs, right? We all have different whys. We need things. So this is a hierarchy of needs, basic needs. Somewhere right there between self-actualization as esteem is the need to put certain technologies on your resume. Once you get battery and Wi-Fi covered, the rest of it like falls in line, right? But you can't worry about some of these higher level things if you're worried about safety, right? That's also a big cultural thing. So we have needs as individuals, and we also have needs as organizations. And I keep using these words, needs and why. Because behaviors only adapt to the level that they need to. If your needs are met, you won't change more. So I said, where are we? Where are you? Right? We're all in different places on this, probably. And there's more than one of these happening at any one time. So the majority not participating in the early innovations, not seeking the advantage, starts to adopt things after it gets legitimized. After someone else demonstrates the competitive advantage, then we want to have that thing, right? We hear the buzzword, we want that thing, because that's easy, right? Majority of the majority will not change their behaviors, they'll just change the words. They'll change the words, they'll change the titles, they'll do the same thing, they'll change the title to DevOps, do the same thing, change the title to SRE, do the same thing, right? Who works there? Who's working on this project right now? Does anyone have this project? Who wants that project on their resume? Be honest. No, just kidding. Like that's easy, right? Those are words. Changing words is easy when nothing needs to work. Right? Does anyone work there? Does anyone have this? How many of these things make it to production in that little curve of innovation? It turns out there's other problems. This social engineering is actually harder than the technology engineering. So I modified this because the original version, it says man. So it's difficult to get someone to understand something when their salary depends on their not understanding it. Because people don't want to change when their needs are already met. Right? I've been meeting my needs working this way. I don't see the need to change. And it's actually even worse than that, because people get attached to how their needs are already being met. They get their identities attached to the task they're performing, and when you tell them they're going to do work a different way, they feel like they're being erased sometimes. So part of this social engineering is to get them to understand or make them be a hero in the new version of the story. So this is a true fact. A normal adult can be fluent in a new language in 6 months, and a native speaker in 2 years. This is true. There's existence proof that this is true. There's a great TED Talk on this topic about all the preconditions and activities that will make this happen for someone to be able to do this. But one of the key things is that most of us won't do this. Like, I can explain how to do something, but you won't do it. And the reason we won't do this, the reason we won't learn these languages is because we don't need to, right? And there's a bunch of other things, and if I had a longer talk, I would explain why when people get upset or worried about retraining their staff, like we have to have all these things retrained. Like, if you can learn a language in 6 months, you can learn Java in less than that, right? If you have these preconditions and you have the need to learn, you'll be able to do whatever problem needs to be solved. I believe that very strongly. So we only learn anything to the level that meets our needs. This is true. This is the speaker ago said that you can't change human nature. This is the core process that controls human nature, meeting our needs. We only learn anything to the level that meets our why. Why? Transformation will only happen to meet the level of the need. And transformation stops when why runs out. So if people in your organization don't know why they're doing things, they're not going to do them any better. So why are you here? You have to answer that for yourself. What I hope is for new thoughts, new needs, and new behaviors. And to kind of close this thread before I go into another thing I'm kind of proud about, something Pivotal's doing, is I make this statement in a lot of my other presentations. You haven't learned anything until you change your behavior. It's not enough to get new information. You haven't learned until you change your behavior. This is very obvious if you're playing sports or music, but for whatever reason and lots of other things, we kind of like to hand wave and collect buzzwords and like not change, but change your behavior. So this year, Pivotal needed to do something different, and we're changing our behavior. So it's nice to talk about software, and I love software, and software's changed the world, but sometimes the best way to change the world is just take direct action and change the world. And we're transforming how the world markets at conferences by going swagless. So you don't have to read that, but basically we want people to be more conscious of the environmental impact of producing the clothing and the promotional products. And so all of the money that would be spent on that is being donated to some nonprofits. And then there's a group of sponsors that are also participating with us. And the reason, so the why, and this goes back to changing the world, is because approximately 80 pounds of used clothing are disposed of each year in the US alone. 80 pounds per person. That's crazy, right? That's crazy. And this is the second leading cause of pollution in water in the world. So I don't know. We do the little bit that we can. And these are the nonprofits. So you're going to get tokens, and you can choose how the money will be distributed from Pivotal and from the sponsors. You get them in the hub. We're supporting Black Girls Code, which is trying to increase the number of women of color in the digital space by empowering girls of color. We're also doing, these are the four. I just think that they're so cool, I want to say their mission out loud. Help women from low-income and immigrant communities learn to design, sew, and sell sustainable fashion. The Nature Conservancy is a global environmental nonprofit working to create a world where people and nature can thrive. And last but not least is The Last Mile prepares incarcerated individuals for successful reentry through business and technology training. And I think those are all great missions, and I'm happy that we're supporting them. So with that, I think I'm going to have my friend and partner in crime come back out on stage, and we'll get back to the rest of the program. Yeah, have you ever talked about cloud-native software?
No, and I certainly never on a Sunday night live with you.
The old Cloud Foundry After Dark?
After Dark is
I met James in 2010 talking about open source cloud software at OSCON.
Yeah, and you told me
when he was at VMware working on Cloud Foundry.
That's true, and you told me the future is the continuous delivery of microservices.
I said that. That's true.
Boy, just missed.
In 2010, yeah, that was true.
Yeah, that was true.
So I've been rambling about continuous delivery since 2010. Easy, yeah.
Yeah.
So you already heard about the 4. You have the choice to donate your tokens. There's also a shout out to the sponsors that came on this journey with us.
Yep.
So let's make a shout out to those sponsors. Big round of applause for all the sponsors that chose to go swagless.
Take a look at their logos. They went swagless in return for this time, so take a look.
So you'll see the swagless symbol in their booths in the hub, and they'll give you tokens if you visit their booth that you can then donate to the charity or the nonprofit of your choice. And then bringing it back to Twitter. Have you ever used Twitter?
Once.
Once?
Yeah.
Once or twice?
Yeah.
So what's a hashtag?
Looks like it's SpringOne.
But what is a hashtag?
A hashtag? It's metadata on a messaging app. Yeah. Use SpringOne hashtag.
If you're participating in this digital world, there's this thing called Twitter.
Yeah.
And you can put posts with SpringOne, and then everyone will see them.
And I will read and retweet every single one of them.
Is that a threat or a promise?
It's just already true.
Yeah. So that's happening. So if you also, I said this in many other talks, but I didn't say it today. If you want to get my attention, Twitter is actually the best messaging option for you. And then tonight, we're going to have a little party, also where you can get the tokens. So there's the hub that we wanted to welcome everyone. Come out, get a little
Be there.
Texas hospitality.
I won't be wearing a hat.
He actually refused. I tried to get him to wear a hat. And
Not cool enough.
It's a long story. If we had longer, we'd tell you that. So with that, I think that is the end of today's SpringOne keynotes. You have a break until 11:30.
Thanks for the housekeeping. It was super exciting morning. Everyone agree?
And to send you out, we also would like you to thank all of the sponsors. So there's the sponsors that we showed you a moment ago that came on the swagless journey with us. These sponsors are what makes SpringOne possible. So big round of applause for all of these sponsors as well. And with that, I think have a great SpringOne. Woo!